Welcome back to the second installment of the Sketching St. Augustine series. If you were here for the first video, you saw us get started while we were on vacation. We took a family trip up to St. Augustine for a quick weekend. I did some drawing in the first video of the old senator, really old historic live oak tree. If you haven't seen that one yet, it's going to be in this playlist as well. Be sure to go back and check that one out. But for today's video, I'm going to hop back into the sketchbook. I'm going through some photos from the trip, and I'm not 100% sure yet with how I'm going to approach the entire sketchbook. So right now I'm starting by just going chronologically. First day we got up to St. Augustine, we actually got tickets for one of the ghost tours that they offer there. They have several that they offer, but this was the Ghosts and Gravestones tour.
Now this place is known for its many hauntings, even being called Spirit Central. One such haunting can actually be seen across the street at our city gates. Her name is Elizabeth. She's seen between 10 and 13 years of age. She's believed to be the young daughter of the gatekeeper, both who died of the yellow fever. She's seen waving to people as they pass by. Why don't we all go ahead and wave to her while we're passing?
Now, as I mentioned in the first video, my wife and I had been to St. Augustine several times before this trip, but this was the first time we had done one of these excursions. This was the first time that we did one of the ghost tours that they offer.
Until eventually a sound woke them up outside of their tent. When they peered out to see what it was, there was a figure of a woman floating above them.
The actors who were all part of this tour were great. It was just a really fun experience, a fun evening, and I look forward to doing it again.
But George, he wasn't done with it.
George want to make his insides.
His outsides.
So as I go through some of the photos, I mean, there were lots of really cool. It's neat because there's a lot of mood, there's a lot of ambiance. Obviously, we're taking a tour in the evening. Lots of dramatic lighting in some of the settings, but there's also just really interesting elements throughout. So as I go through photos, there are certain things that are just kind of jumping out at me. The chandelier that was in the first space where we boarded the trolley. They had a little backstory here that they went through and told us all. But this chandelier, which was just covered in cobwebs and spider webs and just oozed with all kinds of eerie, untouched, ages-old kind of patina and character and stuff. I got a real kick out of that, so I wanted to try and sketch that into the book. In addition, in this same location, we had some of the, they call them life masks, death masks, these plaster molds of different faces that were just kind of adorning the walls. And this kind of scratches a couple of itches that I have when I like to draw, and I do like to draw a lot of faces. I tend to draw people a lot. And this also gave me a chance to add a little bit of that texture that I really enjoy. So, you know, these were plaster molds, so they're not, you know, fully organic, fleshy things. You can have a little bit of grain and a little bit of, you know, cracking and texture and just all that kind of fun stuff in there. So I thought those would be a couple of good things I'd want to incorporate into this scene. I got to admit too, as I'm working on these pages, I'm kind of improvising a lot. There's not really a full-fledged structure to how I'm laying everything out. That can be good, that can be bad. I mean, ultimately that sort of goes back to the age-old artist question about how do you use your sketchbook? Me, I tend to use mine more for ideation, for practice, for working out certain forms and getting things ready, working out ideas and compositions. That's always how I've traditionally used my sketchbook. I really admire and am in awe of the folks that can turn their sketchbooks into their own works of art. I mean, there's a lot of artists out there who really turn these things into something special. And I kind of want to do a little bit of that with this experiment, but I'm still using it to kind of practice. And that's where the Ghosts and Gravestones trolley kind of falls into this. I don't typically draw a lot of vehicles. So that's something that I really know that I want to get in a little more practice on. And this trolley that we took for the tour, it was such an interesting looking thing that I felt like I had to incorporate it in here somehow. And I feel like I'm going to do another one at some point. You know, this is one of the ways, like I mentioned, that I use this sketchbook. It's to work out some of these forms and to practice with things that I don't normally draw, and this is certainly one of those things. And I'm not 100% sold on this rendition of it, but you know, it gives you a little bit of the feel and the flavor for the experience that we took on this trip. One of the places that we did visit during the tour was the old jail there in St. Augustine. It's got some really cool ghost stories tied in with it. And as soon as we got off of the trolley and stood out in front of it, you can see the light was so dramatic, the architecture was so kind of interesting, and it had that old kind of ghost tour feel to it that, you know, from an architectural standpoint, and architecture is another thing that I really want to refine a little bit more, practice a little bit more. I felt like this could be a good test of not just architecture, but lighting and drama, and just trying to get that in there. So I enjoyed kind of getting some of the Tombow markers out and using some of those grayscales to try to rough in these shapes, get in some of these dramatic forms and contrast. And so that one I felt like would go into the book. While we were taking the tour of the old jail, there was a really interesting story about boots that were left in the cell. And so during that part of the tour, they had these boots sitting on a desk with some really interesting, really dramatic light on them. I felt like, as far as a still life type of composition, I thought that was just interesting to me. And again, you'll notice some common themes when I start talking about these, but I thought the texture was interesting. So the lighting on them I thought was interesting. So I felt like they would be fun details to test out and work on. As part of the tour, we also got to go inside of Potter's Wax Museum. Now, this is a whole different thing. You can go in during the day and see some of the wax figures, but as part of this tour, they bring you in after hours and kind of give you some of the backstory about the old pharmacy. And within this space, even just in that first room as we walked in, this idea of the old pharmacy, they had all of these really interesting bottles and prescription bottles and glass bottles and different things. With old bottles like that, you've got the interesting reflections in the glass, you've got the liquid inside, you've got the texture of the labels, you've got the different shapes and sizes and forms. And so I grabbed a couple of those details from photos and added them as well. One thing you'll notice within these 2 pages is the different media that I started to mess with. And this is partly because, as I said at the start of the video, that I went into these pages with not much of a plan other than looking at those ghost and gravestone photos and just finding some interesting things to replicate. As I went about doing each individual piece, some things I felt worked better in the original pencils. Other things gave me an opportunity to work with some of the pens that I have, do a little bit of cross hatching, do a little bit of different line work. And then also I got to bust out some of the different markers, whether it was Tombows or some of my Copics and different things like that, just to do some blending and work on some different shading and things along that nature. And there you have it. Here are some images inspired by our Ghosts and Gravestones tour in St. Augustine, Florida. Stay tuned. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more elements from St. Augustine turn up within this sketchbook. We have many more pages to go and many more memories and photos and things that we took along the trip that we will try to work into this book. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.